My name is Athena Sinclair. I'm 34 years old, and for the last several years I've been living in London, England. I always believed that no matter how far I traveled or how successful I became, there was one place where I would always belong. Home. I was wrong. 3 months ago, I boarded an 18-hour flight with a suitcase full of excitement, a carefully wrapped wedding gift, and a heart that couldn't wait to see my little sister walk down the aisle. I never imagined that before the ceremony even began, my own mother would look me in the eyes and tell me I wasn't welcome. And 3 days later, the same people who erased me from their family would desperately call, begging me to solve a $38,000 problem they had created themselves. But before I tell you how everything fell apart, you need to know how it all started. It was a cold Tuesday evening in London when my phone lit up with a FaceTime call from my younger sister, Brooke. The moment I answered, she could barely contain her excitement. I said yes, she shouted, holding her left hand so close to the camera that the engagement ring almost filled the screen. I laughed and congratulated her. Seeing her so happy made every mile between us disappear. Behind Brooke, I noticed my mother, Diane, quietly arranging dishes on the kitchen counter. When Brooke announced that I was already planning my trip home, my mother's smile faded for just a second. "You don't need to rush into buying a ticket," she said calmly. "It's only going to be a small wedding." Her words felt strange. I smiled anyway. "She's my sister," I replied. There isn't a chance I'd miss the biggest day of her life. Mom didn't argue. She simply changed the subject. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Looking back now, that was the very first warning I chose to ignore. The conversation moved on as if nothing unusual had happened. Brooke excitedly showed me pictures of flower arrangements, color palettes, and the rustic barn where she and Garrett wanted to exchange their vows. She talked nonstop about bridesmaids, music, and decorations while I listened, smiling through the screen. But even after we hung up, my mother's words kept replaying in my mind. "It's only going to be a small wedding." It didn't sound like a mother excited to welcome her oldest daughter home. It sounded like someone quietly hoping I wouldn't come at all. I pushed the thought aside. Sometimes people say odd things when they're stressed. That's what I told myself. About 2 weeks later, my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Brooke. It was my mother. Her voice was unusually warm. "Athena, I need a favor," she said. "What kind of favor?" She explained that Brooke was too young to qualify for several wedding contracts, and after some financial problems, she and Dad couldn't use their own credit either. "The venue needs someone with a strong credit history," she said. "So do the caterer, florist, and photographer." I stayed quiet. Then came the question I had already seen coming. "Would you be willing to sign the contracts for Brooke? How much are we talking about?" There was a brief pause. "A little over $40,000 altogether." "Don't worry, you'll only be putting down the deposits. After the wedding, we'll pay the remaining balance ourselves." $40,000. On paper, it would all be under my name. Every risk. Every legal responsibility. Every payment. I leaned back in my chair, remembering a lesson I had learned years earlier. When I was 22, I trusted my father enough to co-sign a loan that took years to repair. Later, I sent thousands of dollars home during what I believed was a family emergency, only to discover the money had quietly been used for something completely different. Those memories whispered one word. Don't. But another voice was louder. "She's your little sister. Family isn't supposed to keep score." At least, that's what I had believed my entire life. After a long silence, I finally answered. "Okay, send me the paperwork." My mother sounded relieved almost instantly. "I knew we could count on you." Within days, the contracts filled my inbox. The venue. The catering company. The florist. The photographer. Every document carried my name as the responsible party. I read each page carefully before signing. Not because I doubted Brooke. But because experience had taught me that trust and paperwork were two very different things. As winter turned into spring, the wedding plans seemed to move faster every week. Photos appeared online. Dress fittings. Cake tastings. Bridesmaid shopping. Family dinners. I saw everything. Through social media. Not because anyone invited me. Because I happened to find the pictures. One afternoon I called Brooke. "So, what color should I wear?" "Oh," she replied quickly. "We're still figuring that out. I'll let you know." She never did. A few days later I asked whether she wanted me to give a speech during the reception. "I'll text you later," she promised. That message never came either. Little by little, I realized something didn't feel right. No invitation ever arrived. No seating details. No rehearsal schedule. No wedding itinerary. Nothing. Still, I refused to believe my own family would leave me out. I convinced myself that sisters didn't need formal invitations. Family didn't need paperwork. I had no idea. The only paperwork they truly needed from me was the paperwork carrying my signature. 2 weeks before the wedding, I opened Instagram during my lunch break. The first photo that appeared made me stop scrolling. Brooke stood in a white sundress, laughing beside her bridesmaids at what looked like a rehearsal dinner. My parents were there too, smiling as if life couldn't be more perfect. The caption caught my attention. "Celebrating with my whole family." I stared at those 4 words for a long time. My whole family? I wasn't in the photo. I hadn't even known the dinner was happening. For a moment, I thought about calling Brooke and asking the question that had been sitting in my heart for weeks. Why wasn't I invited? Instead, I closed the app. I convinced myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe the rehearsal was only for the bridal party. Maybe they assumed I couldn't arrive early because I was flying from London. Maybe I was simply overthinking everything. So I focused on my trip instead. I booked a full week off from work, spent nearly $1,400 on flights, reserved a hotel close to the venue, and bought Brooke the premium kitchen knife set she'd mentioned wanting months earlier. By the time everything was paid for, I'd spent almost $3,000 before even leaving England. During the 18-hour journey, I kept opening the notes app on my phone. I had been writing a wedding toast for weeks. It was a simple speech about two sisters growing up together, about childhood memories, silly games, and how proud I was of the woman Brooke had become. I smiled every time I practiced it. I had no idea. No one was planning to hand me a microphone. In fact, someone had already decided I wouldn't even make it through the front door. After landing in Nashville, I rented a car and started the drive back to Cedar Bluff. The closer I got to my hometown, the more memories came rushing back. Roads I had ridden as a child. The church where my family used to sit every Sunday. The grocery store where my mom always seemed to know everyone by name. For a moment, it almost felt like nothing had changed. I checked into the Magnolia Inn just before 9:30 that Friday night. The receptionist smiled warmly. "You're here for the Caldwell wedding, aren't you?" I smiled back. "Yes, my little sister is the bride." She congratulated me before handing over my room key. Those simple words from a complete stranger felt warmer than anything I'd heard from my own family in weeks. Inside my room, I carefully hung my navy blue dress in the closet so it wouldn't wrinkle. Then I placed Brooke's gift on the desk and looked at it for a few seconds. Tomorrow, my little sister would start a new chapter of her life. I picked up my phone and called Brooke. It rang. And rang. Then went straight to voicemail. No callback. No text. Trying not to overthink it, I sent Mom a message instead. I just checked into the hotel. What time should I be at the venue tomorrow? Almost an hour passed before my phone vibrated. Only 2 words appeared on the screen. 2 p.m. Nothing else. No. Can't wait to see you. No. Come early so we can spend some time together. Not even. Drive safely. Just two cold words. I stared at the message for a long time before putting my phone down. For some reason, my hotel room suddenly felt much quieter. That night, sleep refused to come. It wasn't because of the thin walls or the noise from another room. It was because my mind wouldn't stop adding numbers. Nearly $3,000 spent just to be there. More than $40,000 worth of wedding contracts carrying my name. Years of sending money home whenever mom said the family needed help. College expenses. Unexpected emergencies. Car repairs. House repairs. Every time she called, I found a way to help. And yet, lying alone in that hotel room, another list slowly formed inside my head. The birthdays everyone forgot. The holidays where my calls went unanswered. The family photos I always saw online instead of being part of. The conversations that happened without me. The invitations that never came. Maybe those weren't isolated moments after all. Maybe they were pieces of a much bigger picture I had refused to see. I walked over to the mirror and looked at myself. I wasn't the same young woman who used to believe that love could be earned by sacrificing more. Still, one part of me kept holding on to hope. Tomorrow will be different. Mom's just stressed. Brooke is probably overwhelmed. Once they see me, everything will feel normal again. That tiny hope was enough to quiet the doubts. Before turning off the lights, I carefully ironed my dress one last time. Then I placed Brooke's gift beside the door so I wouldn't forget it in the morning. I whispered to myself. Whatever happened before, tomorrow is a fresh start. I truly believed those words. The next afternoon, just before 2 o'clock, I parked my rental car outside Meadow Creek Barn. The venue looked breathtaking. White fences stretched across the green fields. Strings of warm lights hung between old oak trees. Guests laughed as they walked toward the entrance, dressed in their finest clothes. The sound of live music drifted through the air. It looked exactly like the fairy tale wedding Brooke had always dreamed about. I picked up her gift. Smoothed the wrinkles from my dress. Took a deep breath. And started walking toward the entrance. I had no idea. Within the next few minutes, everything I believed about my family would collapse forever. Every step toward the entrance filled me with hope. I tightened my grip on Brooke's gift and smiled as guests walked past me, laughing and congratulating one another. Then I saw my father. He was standing near the barn doors, greeting people as they arrived. For a brief second, our eyes met. I expected him to smile. Maybe wave. Maybe walk over and hug me after 2 years apart. Instead, his expression changed. He lowered his eyes, turned around without saying a single word, and disappeared inside the barn. A strange feeling settled in my chest. I kept walking. Just a few steps away from the entrance, the barn doors opened again. My mother stepped outside. She looked elegant in her champagne-colored dress, but there wasn't a trace of happiness on her face. She stood directly in front of me, blocking the doorway. "Mom," I said softly. "I made it." She didn't smile. She didn't hug me. She didn't even move. Instead, she looked straight into my eyes and quietly said, "You need to leave." For a moment, I honestly thought I had heard her wrong. What? This wedding is for family only. I stared at her, unable to process the words. "Mom, I am family." She leaned closer so only I could hear her. "No, you're not invited." My heart felt like it had stopped beating. I looked past her shoulder. Inside the barn, I could see rows of decorated chairs, beautiful flowers, smiling guests. Everything looked exactly the way Brooke had dreamed. Everything had been arranged under contracts carrying my name. At that moment another woman approached us, the groom's mother. She smiled politely and asked, "Diane, is everything all right?" Without hesitation, My mother answered. Oh, yes. She's just a distant relative who came to the wrong place. A distant relative. Not my oldest daughter. Not my child. Just a stranger. Something inside me broke. For years I had believed that if I loved my family enough, if I kept sacrificing, forgiving, and showing up, one day they would finally choose me. Standing there, I realized they already had. They had chosen to erase me. I gently placed Brooke's gift on the stone step beside the entrance. It's for her, I whispered. Then I turned around. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't ruin the wedding. I simply walked away. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is leave a place where you're no longer welcome. As I drove away, tears blurred the road ahead. But for the first time in years, I wasn't crying because I had failed my family. I was crying because I had finally seen the truth. And sometimes, the truth hurts before it sets you free. This wasn't the end of the story. Because only 3 days later, the same family that told me I wasn't welcome called me, begging me to solve a $38,000 wedding bill they could no longer escape. But that's a story for another video.